People said she was making the biggest mistake of her life. In 1885, a young woman choosing love over money was seen as foolish, even dangerous. But when she took the hand of a man everyone called poor, she had no idea that kindness would lead her to a destiny no one could imagine. This is not a story about wealth found overnight. It is a story about how kindness, when chosen again and again, can quietly build something far greater than gold. Before we begin, if you enjoy emotional, meaningful stories like this, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and comment on our channel Soul Tales. Your support helps us share more stories that remind the world how powerful kindness can be. In the spring of 1885, Clara Whitmore stood on the edge of a dusty town in Kansas, holding a single suitcase and a heart full of hope. She came from a family that once had comfort and respect, but hard times had changed everything. Her father had passed, debts had piled up, and society had grown colder toward anyone without money. When Clara announced she was marrying Elijah Boone, people whispered behind closed doors. Elijah was known as a quiet rancher with worn boots, patched clothes, and a small stretch of land that barely produced enough to survive. He wasn't unkind. In fact, that was the problem. He's too soft, some said. He'll never make it big, others warned. Kindness doesn't put food on the table, her aunt snapped. But Clara had seen something different. She first met Elijah when her horse threw a shoe on a lonely road. Elijah stopped without hesitation, offered water, fixed the shoe, and walked beside her for miles to make sure she was safe. He never asked for anything in return. Not her name, not her gratitude. That moment stayed with her. Elijah listened when others talked over her. He noticed small things, how she liked her tea weak, how she paused before speaking when she was nervous. And when he spoke, it was always with gentleness, even when life was hard. So Clara chose him. Their wedding was simple, no orchestra, no silk dress, just a borrowed church, a handful of witnesses, and vows spoken with trembling honesty. Elijah promised to protect her. Clara promised to stand by him. Neither promised riches. Life as a rancher's wife was harder than Clara imagined. Their cabin was small, with a leaky roof and creaking floors. Winters were bitter. Summers were relentless. There were days when meals were thin and nights when worry pressed heavy on their chests. Yet Elijah never complained. When a neighbor's barn burned down, Elijah helped rebuild it before fixing his own fence. When a widow needed help harvesting, he gave his time freely. When Clara asked why he helped so much when they had so little, Elijah smiled and said, "Because someday someone might help us when we need it most." Clara learned kindness was not weakness. It was quiet strength. Years passed, hard ones. There were losses, failed crops, sick cattle, and one winter when Clara feared they wouldn't survive. But Elijah never let bitterness take root. He treated everyone the same, whether they were wealthy landowners or struggling drifters. Unknown to Clara, people noticed. Travelers spoke of Elijah's honesty. Ranchers trusted his word more than contracts. When disputes arose, Elijah was often asked to mediate, not because he was powerful, but because he was fair. One evening, after nearly 10 years of marriage, Elijah told Clara they needed to take a trip. He didn't explain where, only that it was important. Clara hesitated. They barely had enough money to spare, but she trusted him. They rode for hours, then days, moving farther from familiar land. Finally, Elijah guided their horses toward a wooded hill hidden behind old oaks. Clara felt confused, even worried. Then Elijah dismounted and held out his hand. "Come with me," he said softly. They walked through a narrow path until the trees opened, and Clara stopped breathing. Before her stood a grand stone mansion, glowing softly in the afternoon sun. Wide windows, flowered terraces, a fountain trickling with clear water. It looked like something out of a dream, completely out of place in the wild land. Clara turned to Elijah, stunned. "What is this?" she whispered. Elijah's eyes filled with emotion. "It's ours." He explained that years ago, an elderly landowner had trusted Elijah with managing distant property because Elijah never cheated, never lied, never took advantage. Over time, others had done the same. Elijah quietly invested what little he earned, never telling Clara because he feared disappointment if it failed. The mansion had been abandoned for years. Elijah restored it slowly, piece by piece, using fair wages and honest work. Every kindness he gave had come back in ways he never expected. Clara wept, not for the beauty of the house, but for the truth she finally saw. The man she married wasn't poor. He was rich in the only way that truly lasts. They moved into the mansion, but nothing about Elijah changed. The doors were always open. Travelers found rest. Hungry families found food. Clara joined him, turning rooms into shelters, tables into places of comfort. Their home became known as a place of warmth, not luxury. Years later, Clara would say the mansion wasn't built with money. It was built with kindness, given freely, returned slowly, and multiplied beyond measure. When Elijah passed in old age, the town gathered in numbers Clara never imagined. People traveled days to attend his funeral. Each carried a story of help given, of mercy shown, of hope restored. Clara stood quietly, holding his worn hat, finally understanding what true wealth looked like. She spent the rest of her life honoring his legacy, teaching that kindness is not naive, it is powerful. It builds trust, it changes lives, it creates mansions no one can take away. And even today, their story whispers a timeless truth. When you choose kindness, even when the world calls you foolish, you may be building something far greater than you can see. So go gently into the world. Give when it's hard, love when it's risky, and trust that kindness always finds its way home.